I want you to imagine something with me, gently, without rushing, like we are sitting in the same quiet room, late at night. The lights are low, maybe just a lamp in the corner, and the world outside has slowed down to a soft hum. Today, I want to talk about a moment that is small in time, but large in feeling. A moment that happened in the deep quiet of the night, when most people are asleep and the mind is half in dreams, half in reality. I want to talk about what it means to wake up at 3 a.m. and reach for your phone, and what it means to find something there that makes you stop, breathe, and think. A few weeks ago, I woke up at exactly 3:07 in the morning. I didn't know it was 3:07 at first. I just knew that my eyes were open in a darkness that felt different from normal sleep. It wasn't the darkness of being deeply lost in a dream. It was the kind of darkness that feels aware, almost alert. The room was silent, but not empty. There was the faint sound of the fan turning slowly, the distant hum of traffic somewhere far away, and my own breathing, steady but a little heavier than usual. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, feeling that strange mixture of calm and restlessness that comes in the middle of the night. My body was tired, but my mind was awake. I remember thinking that I should just close my eyes and go back to sleep, that there was no reason to be awake. But instead, my hand moved almost automatically toward the bedside table where my phone was resting, face down. This is something many of us do, isn't it? We wake up, and before we even fully understand why, we reach for our phone, not because we need it, but because it is there, because it is familiar, because it feels like a small connection to the world when everything else is still. I picked it up and turned it over. The screen lit up, bright against the darkness, and for a second I squinted, my eyes adjusting. The time glowed at the top, 3:07 a.m., and beneath it, a single notification. Not many notifications, just one. No flood of messages, no bright red numbers piling up, just one small line of text, quietly waiting for me. It was a voice note, sent to me at 2:58 a.m., just a few minutes before I woke up. The name on the screen was familiar, but it made my chest tighten in a way I didn't expect. It was my mother. I felt that moment of hesitation that we sometimes feel before opening something important. That pause, not of fear exactly, but of anticipation. I held the phone in my hand, the room still dark around me, and I wondered why she would send a voice note at that hour. She is not someone who stays up late. She values sleep. She values routine. So why now? Why in the middle of the night? I pressed play. At first, there was only silence, a few seconds of quiet, like she had pressed record and then needed a moment to gather her thoughts. Then I heard her voice, soft, a little tired, but clear. She said my name slowly, gently, like she was speaking to a child rather than a grown man. She said that she couldn't sleep, that she had woken up thinking about something small but meaningful, and that she wanted to tell me before the thought slipped away. She spoke about a morning many years ago, when I was still very young. She described how I used to wake up early and sit at the kitchen table with her, my feet not quite touching the floor, my hands wrapped around a warm cup of milk. She said that I used to look at her with such seriousness, as if I was already trying to understand the world, even at that age. Then she said something that made my breath catch. She said that in that moment, in the quiet of her own sleepless night, she realized how much she missed that version of time. That slow, simple, undistracted time when the day hadn't yet rushed in, when there were no phones, no constant messages, no endless noise. She didn't say this with sadness exactly, but with a kind of tender reflection, like she was holding a memory carefully in her hands. When the voice note ended, the room felt even quieter than before. I lay there, phone still in my hand, listening to the echo of her words in my mind. I felt a mix of emotions, warmth, nostalgia, a hint of longing, and also a gentle awareness that something important had just happened. In that moment, I realized that waking up at 3 a.m. and finding this on my phone wasn't just about the message itself. It was about being pulled out of the rush of everyday life and placed into a quiet space where reflection becomes possible. There is a phrase in English that fits this feeling perfectly. We say, "I woke up in the middle of the night." Not just I woke up, but in the middle of the night, which suggests that special time when everything feels different, slower, more honest. Try saying it with me, slowly. I woke up in the middle of the night. Feel the rhythm of the words. I woke up, a simple action, but then in the middle of the night, like stepping into another world. Another phrase that sits quietly in this story is "I just wanted to tell you." That is what my mother was really saying, even if she didn't use exactly those words. I just wanted to tell you that I was thinking of you. I just wanted to share this memory before it disappeared. Say that gently to yourself. I just wanted to tell you. Notice how soft it sounds, how personal, how unhurried. As I lay there in the darkness, listening to the faint sounds of the room, I started to think about how often we wake up and immediately fill our minds with thoughts of tomorrow, of work, of responsibilities. But that night, my mind stayed with the present moment, with my mother's voice, with the memory of that kitchen table, with the feeling of being seen and remembered. I thought about how language carries not just information, but emotion, connection, history. That voice note was not just a message. It was a bridge across time, across distance, across the years between my childhood and my adult life. I found myself replaying parts of it, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to savor the sound of her voice, the way she paused before speaking, the warmth in her tone. And then, slowly, another memory began to surface, one that connected quietly to this moment. I remembered a time, many years later, when I was living alone in a small apartment, struggling with my own doubts and uncertainties. I used to wake up early, not at 3 a.m., but just before dawn, when the sky was still pale blue. I would sit by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the city slowly come to life. On those mornings, I often felt a quiet loneliness, a sense that I was moving through life but not always fully present in it. I would scroll through my phone, reading messages, checking emails, comparing my life to others without even realizing I was doing it. One particular morning, I remember receiving a simple text from a friend. It said, "Are you okay?" Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, just that small question. But in that moment, it felt like someone had gently tapped me on the shoulder and reminded me that I was not alone. That question stayed with me longer than I expected. It made me think about how often we move through our days without really asking ourselves how we are, without slowing down enough to listen to our own inner voice. So when I lay there at 3 a.m. with my mother's message still echoing in my mind, I felt that same gentle reminder, not from a friend this time, but from my own past, from my own roots, from the person who had first taught me how to see the world. There is another simple English phrase that connects to this feeling. We say, "It made me think." Such a small sentence, but so powerful. It made me think about my life, my relationships, my pace, my attention. Try saying it quietly. It made me think. Let the words linger, like ripples spreading across still water. In that quiet hour, I also began to notice things I usually overlook. The way the darkness wrapped around the room like a soft blanket. The way my heartbeat felt steady and real. The way my breath moved in and out without effort. I realized that waking up at 3 a.m. is not just an interruption of sleep. It can be an invitation to slow down, to reflect, to connect with something deeper. I thought about you, the listener, and how many of you might have had similar moments. Maybe you have woken up in the middle of the night, reached for your phone, and found a message that changed your mood, your thoughts, or your heart. Maybe it was a message from someone you love. Maybe it was an old photo that suddenly appeared in your memories. Maybe it was even a message you had written to yourself months or years ago, forgotten until that quiet moment. In English, we sometimes say, "I wasn't expecting that." That phrase captures the surprise of finding something meaningful when you least expect it. Say it with me. I wasn't expecting that. Feel how it carries both surprise and reflection. As the night slowly moved toward morning, I didn't try to force myself back to sleep. Instead, I let myself stay awake for a little while longer, thinking, remembering, feeling. I replayed my mother's voice note one more time, not to analyze it, but to simply be with it. I imagined her lying awake in her own room, perhaps looking at the ceiling just as I had been, feeling the same quiet stillness. In that shared sleeplessness, even across distance, I felt connected to her in a way that was gentle but profound. And then, almost naturally, my thoughts turned to language, to the way we express moments like this. Not with complex sentences or perfect grammar, but with simple, honest phrases that carry emotional weight. I thought about how saying something like, "I couldn't sleep," is more than just a description. It can also be an invitation to share what is on your mind. Try saying it slowly. I couldn't sleep. Notice how the words feel heavy with meaning, like they hold an entire story within them. I also thought about the phrase, "I was thinking about you." Such a simple sentence, but one that can mean so much. It can carry love, care, concern, memory, connection. Say it softly. I was thinking about you. Let it rest in the quiet between breaths. As the first faint light of dawn began to touch the edges of the sky, I placed my phone back on the bedside table and lay still, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't felt in a long time. I realized that sometimes the most meaningful moments are not the loud ones, not the busy ones, not the dramatic ones. They are the quiet ones, the unexpected ones, the moments that arrive gently in the middle of the night. In my own life, I think I have often been afraid of stillness. I have filled my days with activity, my mind with thoughts, my phone with constant checking. But that night reminded me that stillness is not empty. It is full of meaning, full of memory, full of possibility. Sometimes I feel that we are all moving too fast, speaking too quickly, listening too little. We rush through our conversations, our learning, our lives, without giving ourselves the space to truly reflect. Maybe you have felt this too, that subtle pressure to always be productive, always be connected, always be doing something. But moments like waking up at 3 M can gently disrupt that pattern, inviting us to slow down and notice. I began to see my mother's voice note not just as a message from her, but as a mirror reflecting something inside me. It reminded me of who I was, who I am, and who I am becoming. And in that reflection, I also saw my relationship with English more clearly, not as a set of rules to master, but as a living, breathing way of expressing my inner world. When we say, "I woke up at 3 a.m., we are not just stating a fact. We are opening a door to a story, to a feeling, to a shared human experience. Try saying it once more, calmly. I woke up at 3 a.m. Let the words settle like footprints in quiet sand. As the morning finally arrived, I didn't feel tired. I felt awake in a different way, more present, more grounded. I made my coffee slowly, not rushing, letting the warmth of the cup remind me of those early mornings with my mother at the kitchen table. I thought about how every message we send, every word we speak, every story we share, has the potential to touch someone in a quiet but powerful way. And I thought about you again, sitting somewhere in the world, listening to this story, perhaps relating to it in your own way. Maybe you have your own 3 moments, your own unexpected messages, your own quiet reflections. When you speak English, I hope you remember that you are not just practicing a language. You are learning how to express your inner world, how to connect with others, how to tell your story. When you say, "I just wanted to tell you," you are not just forming a sentence. You are reaching out, opening your heart, sharing a piece of yourself. When you say, "It made me think," you are acknowledging your inner life, your ability to reflect, to grow, to feel. And when you say, "I was thinking about you," you are building a bridge between yourself and another person, across distance, across time, across silence. So as you move through your own days and nights, I invite you to pay attention to those quiet moments, the ones that arrive softly, without drama, the moments when you wake up unexpectedly, when a message touches you, when a memory surfaces gently. Those moments are not interruptions. They are invitations, invitations to slow down, to notice, to feel, to speak with more awareness. Because when we talk about our lives, when we share our stories, when we reflect on our experiences, we are not just practicing English. We are practicing being human, practicing connection, practicing presence. And that is what truly matters in language and in life. I stayed with that feeling long after the night had passed, as if 3:07 a.m. had left a quiet fingerprint on my day. I went to work, spoke to people, answered emails, taught my lessons. But somewhere underneath all of that normal movement, there was still a soft echo of that moment in the dark, of my mother's voice, of the way the world feels when it is almost completely still. On my way to work that morning, I remember standing on the train platform, surrounded by people moving quickly, eyes down, headphones in, phones in hand. The sun was up now, bright and sharp, so different from the gentle darkness of the night. Everything felt louder, faster, more urgent. And yet, inside me, there was still that quiet. I found myself watching people more carefully than usual, not judging them, just noticing. I saw a man in a suit staring out the window, his face thoughtful, almost distant. I saw a woman clutching her coffee tightly, her shoulders slightly tense, as if she was already carrying the weight of the day. I saw a student scrolling through messages, lips pressed together, eyes flicking rapidly across the screen. I wondered how many of them had also woken up in the middle of the night before, how many had reached for their phones, how many had found something that made them pause. We move through the world so close to each other physically, yet so often unaware of the quiet inner lives we all carry. There is a simple phrase in English that came to mind in that moment: you never really know. It sounds almost casual, but it holds something deeper. A recognition that everyone has stories, memories, sleepless nights, and unexpected moments that we cannot see from the outside. Say it softly. You never really know. Let it remind you to be gentle with yourself and with others. Later that day, during one of my lessons, a student asked me why English sometimes feels so difficult, even when they understand the words. They said they could read, they could listen, they could study grammar, but when it came time to speak, something inside them froze. I didn't give them a textbook answer. Instead, I told them about waking up at 3 a.m. and finding that voice note on my phone. I told them how it wasn't just about language, but about emotion, memory, and connection. I said that sometimes speaking in another language can feel like waking up in the middle of the night. You are not fully prepared, you are vulnerable, you are unsure, and yet something real can emerge from that moment. The student listened carefully, and then they said something very simple. I feel that too. 3 small words, but full of meaning. I thought about how powerful those words are. I feel that too. They create connection instantly. They say, I am not alone. You are not alone. Try saying them slowly. I feel that too. Notice how comforting they can be. That evening, when I returned home, I didn't turn on all the lights right away. I let the apartment stay dim for a while, letting myself sink back into that reflective space from the night before. I sat on my couch, phone placed face down on the table, and allowed my mind to wander. I began to think about all the messages we receive in our lives, not just the ones on our phones, but the ones that arrive quietly in memories, in feelings, in unexpected realizations. Some messages are loud and obvious, like a phone call or a text. Others are subtle, like a change in the way we see ourselves or the world. Waking up at 3 a.m. had felt like receiving one of those subtle messages, a reminder to slow down, to listen, to remember what truly matters. I thought about my mother again, about how she had held on to that memory of me at the kitchen table all those years, how it had resurfaced in the stillness of her own sleepless night. I realized that love often shows itself in these quiet ways, not in grand declarations, but in gentle recollections. There is another phrase that fits this beautifully. It stayed with me. We use it when something doesn't just pass through our minds, but lingers, rests, continues to shape our thoughts. Say it quietly. It stayed with me. Feel how the words suggest something meaningful and lasting. As I sat there, I also began to think about you again, about how you might be listening to this in your own space, perhaps at night, perhaps in the morning, perhaps during a quiet moment in your day. I imagined you not just as a student of English, but as a person carrying your own stories, your own 3 a.m. moments. Maybe you have woken up thinking about someone you miss. Maybe you have received a message that changed your mood. Maybe you have had a memory surface unexpectedly, bringing both warmth and a hint of sadness. In those moments, language becomes more than words. It becomes a way of holding your experience, of shaping it, of sharing it with yourself and with others. When you say, I woke up and couldn't sleep, you are not just describing an event. You are opening a window into your inner world. Try saying it slowly. I woke up and couldn't sleep. Let the sentence breathe. And when you add, so I checked my phone, you are telling a very modern, very human story, one that many people around the world can relate to. Say that too. So I checked my phone. Notice how ordinary it sounds, and yet how full of meaning it can be. As the evening deepened, I found myself feeling grateful for that unexpected interruption in my sleep. Without it, I might have continued moving through my days without stopping to reflect, without noticing the quiet threads that connect my past, my present, and my relationships. I think that sometimes life sends us these gentle wake-up calls, not in a dramatic way, but softly, like a voice note arriving in the middle of the night. They remind us to slow down, to feel, to remember. Sometimes I feel that we try too hard to control everything, to plan every moment, to stay constantly busy. But moments like this show us that meaning often arrives when we least expect it, when we are still, when we are open. Maybe you've felt this too, that sense of being pulled out of your routine by something small but powerful. Maybe it was a song, a message, a memory, or even just a quiet early morning. In those moments, you are not just learning English, you are learning how to listen to others, to yourself, to the world around you. When we repeat phrases like, I was thinking about you, or it made me think, we are practicing more than language. We are practicing empathy, reflection, and presence. Try saying one more phrase with me, gently. Thank you for sharing that. It is something you might say to someone who opens their heart to you, who sends you a message in the middle of the night, who trusts you with their thoughts. Say it slowly. Thank you for sharing that. As I finally prepared for bed that night, I placed my phone face up this time, not out of habit, but with a quiet awareness. I knew that I might not receive another message at 3 a.m., and that was okay. The point was not the notification itself, but what it had awakened in me. I turned off the light and lay there in the darkness, breathing calmly, feeling connected to my mother, to my past, to you, to everyone who has ever woken up in the middle of the night and found something meaningful waiting for them. And in that stillness, I felt something simple but profound, that our lives are made of these small moments, these quiet connections, these unexpected messages that shape who we are. So when you wake up one day at 3 a.m., don't be afraid of that moment. Don't rush back to sleep or immediately drown yourself in distraction. Instead, listen, notice, feel, because something important might be waiting for you. And remember, when you speak about it in English, you are not just practicing a language. You are telling your story, honoring your experience, and connecting with the shared human journey we are all on. In the days that followed, I found myself noticing my phone in a different way. Before, it had been almost invisible to me, just another object I reached for automatically, like a cup of water or a set of keys. But now, every time I picked it up, I felt that quiet memory of of the dark room, of my mother's voice, of that pause between sleep and awareness. Sometimes, when I unlocked the screen, I would stop for just a second longer than before, my thumb hovering above the glass. I would ask myself, not out loud, but quietly in my mind, what am I really looking for right now? Am I searching for connection, distraction, reassurance, or simply something to fill the silence? One afternoon, I was sitting in a cafe between classes, The kind of place with warm wooden tables and the soft clinking of cups. People were talking around me, but the noise felt distant, like it was happening behind a thin wall. I held my phone in my hand, then placed it face down, just as I had that night. Instead of scrolling, I watched the light move across the table, slowly shifting as the sun dipped lower in the sky. I noticed the way the barista moved with calm precision, how the milk steamed, how the coffee poured in a steady stream. I realized that in this moment, I didn't need anything else. I didn't need a message, a notification, or a voice note to feel present. And in that stillness, I began to think again about language, about how we describe these quiet moments. In English, we sometimes say, "I just sat there." Such a simple sentence, but it carries a sense of being fully present, of not rushing, of allowing life to unfold without forcing it. Try saying it gently. "I just sat there." Let the words settle, like you are sitting quietly in your own cafe, watching the world move around you. That evening, I called my mother, not at 3 a.m., but at a normal hour, when the sky was turning soft pink and the day was easing into night. When she answered, her voice was warm and familiar, but I noticed something new in it, something deeper, perhaps because I had been listening more carefully since that night. I didn't rush into conversation. I simply said, "I listened to your message again." There was a pause, and then she laughed softly, not embarrassed, just gently amused. She told me that she had almost deleted it before sending, that she had worried it might seem strange or unnecessary. But in that sleepless moment, she had felt a quiet need to reach out, to share that memory, to connect across the distance. As she spoke, I realized that so many meaningful moments happen not because they are planned, but because someone chooses to act on a feeling, however small. In English, we have a phrase for that, "in the moment." It suggests spontaneity, honesty, being guided by feeling rather than logic. Say it slowly, in the moment. Notice how it feels alive, present, unscripted. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a while, thinking about how that single voice note had created a ripple that moved through my night, my morning, my day, and now my conversation with her. It was a reminder that connection does not always require long conversations or perfect words. Sometimes it arrives in a few seconds of honesty in the middle of the night. I also began to notice my own patterns more clearly. I saw how often I filled silence with noise, how quickly I reached for my phone when I felt uncomfortable or unsure. Waking up at 3 a.m. had shown me that silence is not something to fear, it is something to listen to. Sometimes, when I teach now, I encourage my students to sit with a sentence for a little longer than they usually would, not to analyze it, but to feel it. For example, I might say, "Repeat after me, I woke up in the middle of the night." Then, instead of moving on immediately, I let the words hang in the air, like a gentle breath. I imagine you doing that now, wherever you are, letting the sentence rest in your mind, not rushing to the next thing, just allowing it to exist. I woke up in the middle of the night. As time passed, I found that the memory of that night became less sharp, less vivid, but no less meaningful. It settled into me like a quiet lesson I didn't need to constantly revisit. Every now and then I would wake up early, not at 3 a.m. exactly, but before dawn, and instead of feeling frustrated, I would simply lie there and listen to the quiet. Sometimes I would think about my mother, sometimes about my students, sometimes about you, and sometimes about nothing at all. I began to understand that these moments are not interruptions of life. They are part of life, part of how we grow, reflect, and connect. I think that learning English can be similar. At first, it may feel like something you must fit into your already busy life, something that interrupts your routine, but over time, it can become a quiet companion, a way of seeing and expressing your inner world more clearly. When you practice phrases like, "I couldn't sleep," or "I was thinking about you," you are not just memorizing words. You are building the ability to share your experiences honestly and gently. Sometimes I feel that language is like that three-a moment. It meets us when we are vulnerable, reflective, and open. It invites us to slow down, to notice, to connect. Maybe you felt this too, that shift from seeing English as a task to seeing it as a way of living, a way of being more present with yourself and others. And as you continue on your own journey, I hope you remember that it is okay to move slowly. It is okay to pause, to reflect, to wake up in the middle of the night and simply listen. Because in those quiet spaces you may find not only language, but also understanding, compassion, and connection. When you tell your own stories in English, whether about waking up at 3 a.m. or about something else entirely, you are not just practicing grammar. You are shaping your experience, giving it voice, giving it meaning. And that is something truly beautiful. So, the next time you reach for your phone in the dark, or sit quietly with your thoughts, or feel a memory surface unexpectedly, remember that these moments are not small. They are part of your story, part of your growth, part of your journey in language and in life. As weeks went by, that moment slowly folded itself into the rhythm of my everyday life, not as a dramatic turning point, but as a quiet presence that accompanied me in subtle ways. It wasn't something I thought about constantly, yet it was always there, like a gentle background hum that reminded me to move through the world with a little more care, a little more awareness, a little more heart. Sometimes, late in the evening, when the city outside my window softened into distant lights and muffled sounds, I would find myself thinking about how easily we forget the importance of stillness. We fill our days with tasks, conversations, plans, and expectations, and before we know it, we have traveled far from that quiet place inside ourselves, where truth often lives. One night, not long after that sleepless moment, I woke again, though not as suddenly. It was closer to 4 this time, a slow, gentle waking, as if my body and mind had agreed to meet in the quiet before dawn. I didn't reach for my phone immediately. Instead, I lay there, eyes open, feeling the weight of the darkness around me, listening to my own breathing. I noticed how different it felt compared to the first time. There was no anxiety, no restlessness, no urgency to check for messages, just a calm awareness, as if I had learned to trust the silence rather than fight it. In English, there is a simple phrase that came to me in that moment I let myself. It sounds small, but it carries something powerful: permission, gentleness, self-acceptance. Say it slowly with me. I let myself. Feel how those words create space, how they invite you to be rather than to do. I let myself stay awake for a little while. I let myself think. I let myself remember. I let myself feel. I thought again about my mother, not in a nostalgic or heavy way, but with quiet gratitude. I thought about how that single voice note had reminded me that love often shows up in ordinary moments, in simple memories, in small gestures made without expectation. And then my thoughts shifted, naturally, toward you, toward the many listeners who sit with these stories in different corners of the world. I imagined you perhaps lying awake at night, listening to this, or walking somewhere quietly with headphones in, or sitting by a window with a cup of tea, letting the words wash over you. I wondered about your own 3 moments, the times you woke up unexpectedly, the messages you received that stayed with you, the memories that surfaced when the world grew quiet. In those moments, you are not just a learner of English. You are a human being moving through life, trying to make sense of your experiences, your relationships, your emotions. When you say, "I woke up in the middle of the night," you are telling more than a fact. You are opening a door to your inner world. When you say, "I couldn't sleep," you are admitting vulnerability, acknowledging that your mind was too full, too awake, too alive to rest. When you say, "It made me think," you are showing that you are reflective, that you are willing to look deeper rather than move on too quickly. And when you say, "I was thinking about you," you are reaching across distance, across language, across silence, to connect with another human being. As dawn slowly approached that second night, I felt a quiet clarity settle over me. I realized that learning to speak another language is not just about mastering vocabulary or grammar. It is about learning to notice your own life more carefully, to articulate your feelings, to share your stories with honesty and compassion. Sometimes I feel that the greatest lessons in language come not from textbooks, but from lived moments, from sleepless nights, from unexpected messages, from quiet cafes, from conversations that linger in the heart. Maybe you've felt this too, that subtle shift from seeing English as something you study to seeing it as something you live, something that helps you understand yourself and others more deeply. And as you continue your journey, I hope you remember that it is okay to slow down. It is okay to sit in silence. It is okay to wake up in the middle of the night and simply listen to what your heart is trying to tell you. Because in those quiet spaces, you may discover not only new words, but new understanding, new empathy, new ways of being in the world. So the next time you reach for your phone in the darkness, or sit quietly with your thoughts, or find yourself remembering something long forgotten, don't rush past it. Stay for a moment. Breathe. Notice. Feel. And if you choose to speak about it in English, know that you are not just practicing a language. You are giving voice to your experience, shaping your story, and connecting with others who share this human journey. That is what truly matters, not perfection, not speed, not flawless grammar, but presence, connection, and the courage to speak from the heart. This is English with Thomas. I'm Thomas. Keep speaking, keep growing, and keep trusting yourself.